Well, hello, everyone, and welcome in a new edition of Celtics Beat. Just to be perfectly upfront with everybody, the plan going in just a few short hours ago was we were going to go all in on Kevin Durant and Jaylen Brown and all the stuff that's been floating around in recent weeks. Today's not the day. We'll do that for the show next week. Today, obviously, something much more important has happened that we need to react to and want to react to, and that is a very significant moment, obviously, and significant person in Celtics history, the passing of Bill Russell at 88 years old. I am Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, and no one better to talk to right now than Cedric Maxwell, good friend of this program, part of the CLNS podcast network as well, has his own show, but kind enough he's very much in demand, so kind enough to join us and chat with us to talk about the long and forever lasting impression of Bill Russell, an 11-time champion, 5-time MVP, 2-time college national champion, gold medalist, a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a civil rights activist, obviously a Hall of Famer. Max, I would run out of time just listing his accolades and not even give you a chance to talk. So how are you and how are you doing today, obviously, in the wake of this news?
Well, I'm obviously disappointed. I'm sad. Passing of Bill Russell. Know he was as a person, and what he stood for. This was just not only talking about a great athlete, but the real thing is he was a better person, and that's hard to think about when you're talking about all the accolades. Everybody talks right now about, well, Bill Russell is arguably, one of the top 10 players. No, he's the best player ever. He is the GOAT. Multiple championship rings, 11 championship rings, Hall of Famer. All the things he's done outside the game. What do you do to honor Bill Russell? Well, there's a street in the middle of Boston called Boylston Street. Let's change that street right now the Russell way. And the reason I say that is because they say, well, how about putting a statue in front of the garden? Wait, that's passé. You don't need to go there anymore. And I think he was bigger than sports with the other things you talked about. He was on the front line of civil rights. I think he was there for I said a dream speech. I have a dream speech. So, I mean, I don't even know where to go. I'm just at a loss for words. One of the things that Bill Russell, and I'll call him a friend, a mentor, but whenever he saw you, whenever he saw me, he'd give me the biggest smile. And the next thing he'd do, he'd give me the middle finger. He give it to me. And I think, and everybody I talked to that he's loved, that's what he did. I mean, that was your rite of passage if you really knew Bill Russell.
Well, I was going to say, we've seen, everyone has seen like the clip of him flipping off Charles Barkley at the Hall of Fame. And, there are multiple other occasions where just photographs all over Twitter of Bill Russell in his elder years, north of 80, giving this guy the finger, that guy the finger. Bill Russell loved to flip people off.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess a lot of guys like
that was his term of endearment, I guess.
Yeah. A lot of guys like to shake hands. That wasn't his thing. He didn't want to shake no hands. He wanted to flip you off. And that was his way of just saying, hey, hello, I guess. But what a great individual. And for me to know him personally, to be part of the Celtic family, that to me, that's the most special thing I have about that, is that I remember him coming back by, when we were practicing my younger years and see us practice. Not stepping on the court, not even giving any kind of advice, listening to him as a broadcaster, as an analyst, talk about the game. The first coach, first Black coach. And you talk about the first Black coach, but won a championship. I was there when Dave Cowens did it as a player coach. Didn't do it well at all because it was just so tough trying to be a basketball player, a coach, and all those other things. Bill Russell did it well enough that he won a championship when he was a player coach. So, man, it's really hard to say anything else about Bill Russell.
And not even just a player coach. I mean, obviously he was, and he won multiple championships in that capacity. The 13 titles, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But, he, or 11 titles in 13 years, pardon me. He also I mean, he was the first black coach in North American professional sports history. So never mind just the NBA or first for the Celtics, like first across sports in North America, which obviously came with all of its own challenges, Max. And then to do it, and look, we talk about this a lot, but regardless of how you view Boston with respect to race, here in 2022, there are a whole bunch of documented things that happened back in the 50s and 60s and Bill Russell's heyday. That came with a whole bunch of other challenges, obviously him being vaulted into that capacity, and he just always found a way. Obviously, like, I wasn't there to see it, but what you read about him, what you've heard about him, he always found a way to rise above, and that's just such a significant part of his legacy.
For him to be a winner, and people said this before, the greatest winner in sports. You can look at the other three major sports and you try to get a line in there. Was Tom Brady's won 6 Super Bowls, but Russell won 11 championships, man. Did it 8 times in a row. His calling card is 2 national championships, Hall of Fame, Olympics, man, and everybody around him. And I think because of him giving you the finger, and people said, well, maybe people didn't like Russell. Very seldom I can say I've ever heard people say anything negative about Russell, because Russell was like your grandpa. Grandpa say something to you, be like, okay, all right, Grandpa, let me get it done. Let's move on. I might not agree with you. I might not like it, but I'm gonna get it done. And that's the way Bill Russell's looked at. Presidential Medal of Freedom. Man, who gets that for playing basketball? So yeah, that's how he impacted the world, not just the basketball world, but the world around him.
Mm-hmm. That's really important, and that's like there's this interesting dynamic currently in the league, with new players getting ginormous contracts, and then guys like Charles Barkley saying on TV, like, hey, you guys need to thank us for paving the road for you, because you guys don't make all these millions if we don't lay the foundation, so to speak. So my question revolves sort of around that. Do we collectively celebrate Bill Russell enough for paving the way for literally almost everybody?
No,
because
no.
It doesn't feel like it. And now that he has unfortunately passed, I feel like we're going to try and make up for lost time here, and it's going to be impossible to do.
What do they say about that? Give a guy his flowers while he's alive.
Right.
Give that person their flowers while they're alive. There is nothing that we can do that's going to elevate Bill Russell more as a basketball player. The next thing that we do, we talk about him as humanitarian. That's where we go. And if you do anything other than getting this man a street in the middle of Boston, I think that's the next step that you go to, because he meant that much to civil rights. He meant that much to Boston. He meant that much as a player that played in the NBA. Mm-hmm. He said black or white. It's just like he had that about him.
He changed the game.
Yeah, he did. You would hear that from all his contemporaries, Tommy Heinsohn, all those guys said Russell changed the game. He wasn't the greatest shooter, but as Tommy would say, when he had to make them, babe, he made them. He made them. He wasn't the greatest free throw shooter. Big time made free throws, block shots. They didn't even record block shots back during this time. 20, 30 rebounds in a game. There was nothing to be, that would happen a lot.
One of the reasons, Max, that we wanted to have you, and I'm sure in part why so many want to have you in terms of doing interviews, is not just your obviously current day Celtics affiliation, that you're such a great guest here, but like we could have anybody on the show who's a historian or who can just like talk about Bill Russell's impact on the NBA, the things that you read about. But what's really hard to find is someone like yourself who had a personal relationship with him, as you touched on. And, I know you started to talk about it a little bit, but I'd love for you to just expand some more about what it was like being a player here in Boston. And, I don't know how present Bill Russell was in those days, obviously, and what kind of you use the word mentor, what kind of a mentor, he was to you in terms of learning from him both on and off the floor.
I mean, I would say my conversations were limited with Bill. I could say they might be as many, maybe as 10, 15 minutes. There wasn't anything where we went out and broke bread or nothing like that. But during those times that he spoke to me, it was like I was soaking in knowledge. And he talked about all kind of things, how it was when he played during his day. There was a movie called The Green Book, which was out a couple of years ago. Might have won an Academy Award, I think. And one of the actors in there was pretty much about civil rights. He was a great pianist who played during the 60s and early 60s and late 50s. And he was barnstorming around the country. He went from the North to the Deep South. And in the Deep South, he was playing at a restaurant. And the guy said, well, you can't eat here. What do you mean? I'm playing here. He said, well, let me give you a story. He said, one time the Boston Celtics came to town and their big kahuna, I guess he was making reference to Bill Russell. And the guy said, I wonder where he ate. And the guy, being funny, said, I don't know, but he didn't eat here. And it was just a clear thing about Bill Russell wasn't allowed to eat in a public restaurant. I mean, here's a guy won Olympic medals, and that didn't happen for him. So it's all this craziness that you think about and you talk about who Russell was. It was just crazy.
Well, Evan and I were just talking before the show too about, and a lot of it people have probably seen, it's floating around social media right now, but, stories his daughter has told in the past of, what it was like when he was playing. And obviously the racism and so much more. Like, racism doesn't even feel like enough in terms of describing it. Exactly. Vandalism and so much, like Celtics would go on the road and he'd come back home and his trophy cases have been destroyed and his trophies vandals would break in and literally defecate in his bed underneath the sheets. I mean, the kinds of stuff that he had to encounter. And I mean, it's just beyond words. Like, I don't even entirely know where I'm going with the question. Were there ever, like you said, you didn't go out and break bread, but, did you ever ask him, like, man, like, what was that like playing in here in this town or in this city and in that age and versus anything that obviously you experienced in your career?
Well, really didn't talk that much about it. I mean, they just touched on it. I remember Sam Jones talking about how he couldn't eat in a restaurant and how things happened in I think it was Fort Wayne, Indiana, how they couldn't eat. Russell talked about the same kind of things that happened during the time that he had to be around and just things that he wanted to do. And it was when you thought about it, when I looked at it, it was just sad, to think that all they wanted to do was play basketball. But he was shot into the forefront of civil rights. And that, to me, that was huge.
But also embraced it. Like some guys probably all they wanted to do was play basketball. Well, but it doesn't seem like that was true of him.
Didn't embrace it. What he did, he wrapped himself in a blanket of it. And it was almost like a cocoon. He was going to somehow come out on the other side like a butterfly. This is who Bill Russell was. He understood the system. He understood where he came from. University of San Francisco, the Dons coming into the NBA, huge trade. Bill Russell, that Red Auerbach was able to pull, and then coming to Boston, being in a town that they didn't even sell out. Here's a team that won, but the Bruins could sell out, and they couldn't. And it was basically because of the color of their skin. They were in Boston, a town that did not really respect and love those players of color who played on that team. That's how great they were. And you think of it, to be in your own team, to be in your own city, and to be a team that good, that's crazy. And not to be respected, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, as Kaufman was talking about that last question, of the Michael Jordan quote of, like, Republicans buy shoes too, like, comes up, and it's like there's that mentality, and then there's Bill, as you said, wrapping himself in a blanket and, like, carrying it forward for the rest of everything. Like, I'm not trying to be like, I'm not trying to start a war here. I'm just saying, just to look at the two ways of handling the situation.
Here's the thing: you can't even compare one to the other.
Right.
You can't compare Russell, what he did. You can't. That just can't even be compared. Those
You to go.
things, what Russell did was unique in a way that we can't even think about. And his time on this earth, if I can get 88 years and impact the world the way he has, that's all, any of us would love to do. He was a giant. Not only was he a giant like that physically, but he was a giant among men. When he walked into a room, his presence was felt. The great ones would always bow down to him. And that was just unbelievable when you think who he was.
Do you think that, and I don't know how much in the later years, obviously, because it's not like Bill Russell traveled a lot or came back to Boston a ton. Like occasionally you'd see him in Springfield at the Hall of Fame or obviously at the NBA Finals, that type of thing. But in his later years, I don't know how much you had an opportunity to talk to him, but it was very clear, just me being an outsider looking in and seeing him on video or in interviews, always smiling and laughing and jovial and happy. I mean, do you think that by the end he was so, like, despite everything, so much that he had endured, it was trumped by all that he accomplished, in the end?
I think that he was at peace with himself. That's all that happens. I think that, yeah, you can be mad, all these things happen, but at the end of the day, you just want to be at peace. And that's what he was. I'm one of my last moments with Bill Russell that I can remember so well was at Kobe Bryant's passing. They had a big event. And I'm thinking to myself, the players got seats and they were like, well, Max, we'll see if we can get you a seat at Kobe's thing. And I'm thinking like, well, I don't want to sit up in the, nosebleeds. And they finally give me my seat and I get to my seat and Bill Russell's sitting right in front of me. So I said, I must have a good damn seat up in this piece. and I remember him standing up, but just physically, you could see that he was tired. His body was starting to fail because he was, remember, trying to get up literally out of the seat, and it's hard for all us big guys to do it. Knees are so bad. And I'm behind him, and I give him a push to get him up out of the seat. And it was just so, I mean, I don't feel like I was his best buddy, but the fact that he knew me, that I could be a guy that he could say, hey, I'm going to give you the finger right now, that was real cool to me. I was like, man, I must be a cool dude in order for Bill Russell to give me the finger, to give me the bird. So yeah, that's good stuff.
In the same way that we kind of, used to talk about Betty White all those years. Like, I mean, did you ever think this day was coming? Like, didn't Bill Russell just kind of feel like a guy that you'd have around forever?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, like you said, with Betty White, when those kind of people finally pass away, you think to yourself like, man, he didn't live forever. He didn't, that guy isn't, that he was a human, that he's, gone on. Yeah, I think that is something you look at. Betty White was, I guess, going to be 100 and passed away. Bill Russell at 88, all he accomplished in life. Those are moments, and these are moments in history that we'll all look at and we'll look back on and going, that was a cool time. It was a cool time for me to be. And one of the things people kept saying to me today, many times, said Celtic legend and another Celtic legend, Bill Russell, passed away. I said, dude, stop calling me a legend. I couldn't carry Bill Russell's jock around if I wanted to. He was that great. He's the legend. I'm a guy having to play there, play well. I could be a Celtic great, but Bill Russell is the legend. And I'm just a guy who was there.
I appreciate that, Max. I really do. But I will tell you, I was saying to Evan before we started the show that I do believe, and maybe it's like semantics or whatever, but I do believe that there are, I don't know, there are roads or avenues or pantheons of Celtics greatness to where, like, yeah, like Bill Russell's in a league all his own. Like Larry Bird's not in Bill Russell's league, and Larry Bird is arguably the greatest Celtic of all time. And, in the eyes of many, obviously. So like, what you accomplished, obviously on the floor and finals MVP, like we've talked about your accolades, those go in a certain category, but when it comes to like the broadcasts and your decades with the team since retirement. Like, you're a Celtics legend, man. You are. It's just it's in a different way.
That's really cool to say. But when you think about legends, this man, when Martin Luther King was speaking, he was on the front row.
Yeah, he's sitting next to him.
He's sitting on the front row.
Got Kareem on the other side.
Right, yeah.
And you look at the pictures, Ali, all these people, he was there. I think I want to say, somebody just told the story in 1964. At halftime of the All-Star game, at the All-Star game ready to begin, Bill Russell said, guys, we're not going to play until we get a pension. And Wilt Chamberlain wanted to play, Russell didn't, and they took a vote, and they got the pension. They got the pension from the NBA. That was the strength of Bill Russell, who he was as a person, and a negotiator. Yeah. This dude was different, man. He's a different dude. As much as we want to talk about Kyrie Irving, Bill Russell was Kyrie Irving to the 10th power. Sometimes you didn't understand him. Sometimes he would go against norms. But man, what a great player and what a great person he was. His teammates could depend on him 110%. Russell, block this shot for me. Do this, do that. He was just that good.
Well, what's really funny too. So I was just talking to somebody earlier today after this happened, and they said to me, and they're not from Boston. They said, like, who was the better trash talker, Bill Russell or Larry Bird? And I said, it was Larry, because Larry was the kind of guy that would, he would tell you what he was going to do to you, and then he'd do it. Bill Russell was, at least, I didn't watch him firsthand, but what you read about, he was more the silent assassin type. Like, he would just go there. But I loved, and we've all heard this story, and it's floating around Twitter. There's the interview that it was many years ago, like when they were much younger, but after they'd retired, that Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were doing together, talking about their rivalry, but also their friendship. And you hear Wilt going like, man, like, this guy, he'd come, he'd stay at my house, he'd eat my food, he'd hang out with my mom, whatever, and then he'd kick my ass.
That was Russell. But that tells you about that particular era. Yeah. That great players had to go to somebody else's house to eat. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't eat at Magic's house if they were giving away caviar and they got steaks all over. I wouldn't do that. I'd rather starve. I would starve before I would be going to Magic's house or one of my competitors, Worthy or Dr. J. I wouldn't want to eat their food. But it was a different era where they had to have a certain relationship that bypassed basketball. It was just basic, just living, or being able to go out and eat. Well, when you get to town, my mom is going to cook because I know there's not a restaurant that's going to serve you.
Yeah.
That was, I don't know. I have it's hard to talk about Bill Russell in a podcast in 40 minutes, It's really tough. No. One thing I'll say is Adam brought it up with Betty White. And it's not even really a question. It's just more of kind of a statement. The impact of Bill will live on forever, whether it's, the pension fund for the NBA or, the Bill Russell trophy that's given to the MVP of the finals. Like, Bill Russell's legacy lives on forever through the NBA. And that's, if you have the ability to do that as a person throughout your life, never mind the magnitude of Bill Russell in the NBA, but like that, you've done it. We've done it right, and that's all. That's it. My only point is, if we all could just, strive to be a Bill Russell someday, maybe the world will be a better place.
If we could be a fraction, of what Bill Russell is, then we would have a much better world. Yep. Because not only was he, and we talked about his accolades as a player, but what he did for people to, go out and stand up to, racism. He didn't have to do that, but he did it because he felt that was right. So, guys, it was a pleasure getting on with you guys, man. And
great pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to retouched this subject many, many times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Without question.
Big
Max,
time.
thank you so much for
Thank you, Max.
hopping on with us. We'll let you jump off, but good luck with all the other people that are knocking down your door to talk to you.
Yep.
All right, buddy, take it easy.
All
Appreciate
right,
it,
you
Doc.
as well. Cedric Maxwell, obviously, he is a Celtics legend. You're not going to argue with me on that. You know what I was gonna? I know
Well,
Max
we are.
obviously had to run. Yeah, I know that Max had to run, but the
He can't, can we just bring everybody behind the curtain for a minute
sure,
here?
yeah.
Max is getting a call from like NBA radio and 98.5 and did us first.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, like Max
yeah.
is in.
Oh, and he's doing his TV hits later on. But yeah, I do think he talked to us first.
Way too long. He didn't even. We were trying to get 20 minutes, and I think he gave us like almost 40. So I mean, like that's if the ability to do that,
I know. I don't even know how, because I don't have like a counter or whatever. I don't know how deep we are into the show. But yeah, like we came on, he's like, all right, I've got like 15 minutes.
Yeah, he gave us like 35. So
yeah, we definitely went more than that. What I was gonna say to him before he did go, to build upon the last point that you made, is and I don't know, I'm sentimental about this stuff, just to be candid, but what really jumps out at me is, I think as generations go on, it's becoming more and more rare that you encounter athletes, any sport, that are as in tune with and as respectful of the generations that came before them, and that are historians of the game. And as you talked about earlier, like people like Barkley saying like, we paved the way for you. I know you hear like, we were talking about it with Keith Smith, I think it wasn't with Keith. Who was it with? I don't know. A recent show we were talking about. Oh, Jared. When Jared Weiss did the show, that like Brogdon talked about how big a Russell and Auerbach fan his grandfather was, and that Gallinari, like he and his dad, like growing up Larry Bird fans. So I love hearing that stuff. Like even if it's BS, I just love hearing it. But what's genuine, and they were genuine as well, just to put that out there. What's genuine though is that you have so many tweets that have come out from, whether it's Tatum, Brown, Grant Williams, players for other teams, it goes beyond Celtics team statement.
Yeah,
and
I'm looking
NBA's
at the
team
internet.
statement. Like Irvin, Magic Johnson talking about how
it's
Bill
not just
Russell
basketball players.
was his, and not just basketball. Exactly. I've such great respect for when, the true greats, the true legends do pass tragically or sadly anyway. I guess it's hard to say tragic at 88, but it always feels tragic when something like this happens, that there's that outpouring of respect from the younger class, the modern day players that say, okay, I mean, maybe if, just to throw a random name out, like George Mikan passes away, you're not going to see the same outpouring in the way that you are a Bill Russell. And
there's a few reasons why.
No, of course, but we're still talking about another guy who's on the top 75 list. I'm not saying he's Russell or was as nearly as impactful or anything like that. It's not the same. That's not my point. My point is that I appreciate seeing guys like Grant Williams, for instance. I think this was his tweet saying something to the effect of, we're not here without you. And I love seeing it. I love seeing that respect coming from the current athletes. Maybe I'm not saying this the right way, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Again, my point earlier was more about, it all happens when he passes, but we don't do enough.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Absolutely.
When he's alive, right? We don't do enough of the like random Tuesday in October, Jaylen Brown, a Bill Russell appreciation post. I'm not.
But that's just that's sort. I guess I'm willing to excuse that, because, I mean, that's not a sports thing. Like, when does that ever happen? No,
it doesn't. And that's maybe
that's what's wrong with us
problem,
as people.
Right? Maybe that's just, we're all messed up. But it sucks when, to me personally, it's just, again, the guys had just a ginormous impact on not just basketball, but just kind of like society in general, and has been a part of a ginormous, powerful movement. that helped with racial equality in America.
Yeah.
That we continue to struggle with. That's a point for a different podcast.
Sure.
But it's like you talk about titans of American sports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to boil it down to just giant figures in American culture.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Russell is very, 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 very close to the tippy top of that list. And,
yeah, without a doubt. Again, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is the highest honor a civilian can receive.
Yep.
I mean, I know Max, like, how many basketball players win that? It's bigger than that. Like, how many people get the Presidential Medal of Freedom? Just regular old civilians. It's not a long list.
Yeah.
You know, so the fact that Bill Russell obviously is honored for everything that he did achieve and do and motivate and everything in his life. Yeah, I mean, that is significant without a doubt.
He's just a pioneer of American culture. And again, my only point was it's sad that we didn't celebrate him probably enough, but that's the way life is. You don't.
Yeah, but it is, because it's like, yeah, I mean, that, and I'm not using the best example because it's not like their lives have been parallel, but if we're just keeping it in the Celtics community, that's like saying, well, next week, like, we're going to break down, like, we're going to do a random tribute to Larry Bird. And look, maybe we should be.
Maybe we need, yeah, right. This is the point.
You know, but that's just not the way it works.
I know.
Like,
it's just, yeah, and that's, maybe we need to make it. Again, it's not going to be Adam and I on Celtics Beat.
Yeah,
change that changes the world here, but you know, it's just one of these things that happens when somebody passes, and you try and put everything into perspective, and you just try and, because you want to do it right. You want to pay tribute correctly, and like I said 10 minutes ago, or whatever it was at this point, it is impossible to pay tribute to Bill Russell in a 1-hour podcast. Correct. Mm-hmm. We're going to try, you know, hey, we did our best shot. Sure. Other people are going to try throughout the week, throughout the month. You're going to see a lot of this stuff. Maybe if you combine it all together, you'll get something close. And you need to gather a whole bunch of perspectives to do this correctly. Like, again, peel back the curtain for a second. We tried to get Bob Ryan on originally on this show because Bob is, I mean, you want to talk about the short list of historians of Boston Celtics history
and the NBA in general.
He's one of the few guys that would be able to talk to you, you know, somewhat accurately about Bill Russell's life and his impact on basketball the appropriate way. Another way to do that is to get a former NBA player that played with the Celtics. That's another way to do it. So we were lucky in that regard. But just, you know, again, we're all going to be, it's just going to be throughout the week, a lot of this going on. And, you know, maybe collectively all together, we're all paid tribute correctly, but it's impossible to, I said this, it's impossible to understate how important Bill Russell was to basketball. It's impossible. Because so much stuff, man. I mean, if you want, and people, you think you're BSing them, but you're not. You're not. That's not BS. I'm telling you. That man accomplished a lot of stuff. But a lot of people got to accomplish a lot of more stuff on the shoulders of Bill Russell.
Well, just to put that in, because we are rambling, so we will wrap up, but just to put that in a perspective.
Right.
Pick one note. Pick one random note from Bill Russell's life. Never mind career, life. 11 championships. You know, just like, imagine that's all he accomplished, and there was no like 5-time MVP and 2-time college basketball champion and Presidential Medal of Freedom and Olympic gold medalist and first black head
world-class high jumper too. Like, we're all forgetting that.
I know. The point is, and we've touched on a fair amount of it, and I'm sure we haven't done all of it, but you know, we're not sitting here reciting his Wikipedia page, but we've touched on a fair amount of it over the course of this show. If you just pick one of those things, just one, it's impressive. And depending on which one you pick, like the 11 world championships, it's historic. You put it all together and it's just almost beyond comprehension.
It is. It's
Th-
not
this-
even, that's not hyperbole.
It's I mean, it's why I had remarked that I said this in an interview that I did with my radio station earlier today, you know, in the moments after the announcement came out from Bill Russell's family, that so often, you know, it's almost formulaic, Ev. Like, so often when an athlete passes away, there's the way it's written, you know, like Bill Russell, 11-time champion, 5-time MVP, and blah 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 blah, blah, has passed away. He was 88. You know, it's always written that way.
Mhm.
And we just sort of default because that's how we're used to talking about athletes or titans of whatever sport, even if they're not titans, like, you know, the whole thing that happened with Adam Schefter after, obviously, you know, earlier in this football season when there was a passing, and that had gone on with you remember who the former brief Steelers quarterback before that with Washington,
Oh,
Dwayne
yeah, yeah,
Haskins,
yeah, yeah.
Dwayne Haskins,
Yeah.
that whole, you know, Twitter sort of controversy that had happened. It's always written that way, but we lean into that so heavily that when you start to talk about a guy like Bill Russell, all of that stuff, it's like, way to bury the lead, man. You know, like, by the time you get to Presidential Medal of Freedom and civil rights activist and first black coach in the history of North American sports, and like all the things that are just so much more important than what he actually accomplished on the floor, which were historic in and of themselves. It's just remarkable. It is not even doing it justice.
There won't be another one.
No, there won't. They
No,
can't. There
possible.
can't.
That's what you lost. You lost a 1 of 1, and we're all 1 of 1. Like, but
Oh, but
I mean,
that's
we're not all made like Bill Russell, man. I'm telling
yeah,
you.
but you, me, we're replaceable. That's a 1 of 1.
Not to get all
Yeah.
philosophical here, but
Yeah.
there's never gonna be anybody like him ever again, and that's the crazy part. And that's,
Well,
again, you can't talk about it in an hour-long podcast.
our special thanks to Cedric Maxwell. I know that you're going to hear him in a variety of places. You are. It's, you know, it's not, you know, the most unique, the fact that he was here with us, but I do genuinely hope that of all the interviews that he does on TV later, or radio, or even as in this moment as you and I chat, he's probably doing NBA TV or whatever. I do hope that this interview was among his best and one that you enjoyed the most. If you happen to catch multiple of them, I know that we had a lot of fun, to the degree that one can have fun, you know, memorializing somebody. But Max is always terrific and wonderful to have on the show, and we will do it again when it's a little bit lighter the next time around, hopefully. But Ev, thank you, obviously, and,
Hey.
thanks to everybody for your flexibility on waiting for the show to come out on a Sunday.
Can we again, we're bringing everybody kind of inside our text thread here. We were originally going to do this at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
A different show entirely.
Yeah.
Like, completely, as Adam mentioned. And it would have been very Celtics Beat like.
And this news happened at about 1:20, 1:30.
Right. It would have been in the middle of the recording, but in true Celtics Beat fashion, we probably would have finished the recording somehow, and then it would have came out, and then we would have had to scrap it. So, like, in the world of content, everybody, the world doesn't stop. So you just kind of have to hold on and hope that you're relevant. So, you know, again, the fact that Cedric was able to take some time after grocery shopping to speak with us.
Yeah.
Again, we wanted to give you guys a good show, because this is not like, you can't just half-ass this show. You cannot do that. And it's really hard to do a Bill Russell remembrance show with an hour of prep, folks. It's impossible. I mean, he has,
especially honestly, as and I'm not speaking for Max, just Evan and I, as two guys that didn't watch Bill Russell play.
Right. And we've all seen highlights, right?
Yeah.
But, like, you know, it's different to live it than to watch it on YouTube or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So this is a super hard show to do considering the time constraints. And I just hope everybody gets something out of this in terms of, like, wow, you know, Bill Russell, you know, instead of just remembering Bill Russell for the trophy at the end of the finals, like, he's just way more than that. And again, like I said, it's really difficult to put it into an hour. It is.
Red Auerbach is more than a signature on the parquet floor.
Right. This is again titan of American sports culture. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, but we thank you for being along for the ride with us, and hopefully this took you the older folks down memory lane, and a younger generation, hopefully it taught you a few things as well. And again, not Evan and I, just the perspective of Max is always one that we really enjoy. So we'll talk to you again next week, and look forward to it.